Hello, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome to Padilla, and good morning to those here and viewing on YouTube Live. My name is Katie Myers, and I'm based here in the New York office of Padilla, which is a marketing company that helps build, grow, and protect brands. I'm your host this morning. And a quick background about the POV series. This series is dedicated to sharing knowledge across the spectrum of communications, from traditional public relations to targeted marketing. Our topic this morning is artificial intelligence. What exactly do we mean when we talk about AI? At its most basic level, we're talking about machine intelligence that mimics cognitive functions that humans associate with other human minds, such as learning and problem solving. And the US has been the epicenter for AI research over the last 50 years, and it's being used commercially in areas ranging from logistics to data mining, medical diagnosis, customer service, and marketing. And we are in good company this morning as we're here speaking key stakeholders from 38 companies, including Facebook, Amazon, Intel, Ford, United Airlines. They're at the White House to discuss AI, its opportunities, and the challenges that are emerging with new advances in these technologies. And there are certainly opportunities for AI to improve efficiency and increase economic growth. But at the same time, Washington has concerns about job automation and competitive threats from other countries. So you can see why this is a timely topic. Today, we are honored to be joined by Hamid Padilla, CEO and co-founder of Natural Numerics, who will discuss how his company is using AI. Mike Garrison, Vice President of Insights and Strategy at Padilla, who will share some of the implications of AI in the ecosystem of trust. And Joel Erb, Senior Director of Digital Growth at Padilla, who will examine the relationship between trust and value. Once they finish presenting, I'll come back up and moderate questions from the audience, both here and virtually. And for those of you watching online, please use the event hashtag Padilla POV for any questions. We will be monitoring social channels and will respond during the Q&A if time permits or after the event. So now, let me hand it over to Hamid.
Thank you, Katie. And thank you, Padilla, for including me in this awesome event. I'm a big fan and a big believer in AI. In 1994, I built a biped robot that learns how to walk on its own, just to show my company, was a GTE, a telecom company, the power of AI. How can intelligent systems solve complex problems? Now, 1994, that was before the iPhone, before Wi-Fi, before cloud computing, so you can only imagine how painful it was to build an AI system with very little data and tiny computers. They were huge in size, but their computing power was tiny. That was a great idea, was ahead of its time. Today, we have cloud computing everywhere, incredibly powerful, incredibly cheap. Data is everywhere. And most importantly, there are so many business opportunities that are ripe for the picking for any intelligent system in all kinds of areas: finance, marketing, healthcare. And that's where I decided to start my company, Natural Numerics, where we apply AI to big data in general and in financial markets specifically. So I can bore you to death talking about AI forever, but I'm going to talk about just a couple important aspects of AI, which I think are important to know. So the first thing is, the question is not whether to use AI or not use AI, because whether you know it or not, you are using AI. You are using it on your iPhone, you are using it in your company, and your vendors are certainly using AI to provide you the services they're providing you. So the real question is how to leverage AI to improve your products and services, improve productivity, and give your clients better customer experience, and also, most importantly, enable innovative products and services. So let's define what AI is, because many times people are, I wouldn't say confused, but they're not always clear on what it means, because there's so much stuff on the media talking about AI. The first AI system that's entered your home is probably the thermostat. It's an incredible device. It reads the temperature and magically turns on or off your furnace. That's an AI system. That's how AI has been for a long time. It's automation of information processing. Now, whether it's processing one piece of data, which is the temperature in your room, or processing terabytes of web visits data and decides what content to serve your clients or your visitors, it's the same thing. Basically, you're processing data, you're automating the processing of data. So that's the present state of AI. The exciting part is the future of AI. And the future of AI is more the making superhumans by augmenting their analytical abilities with this awesome power of processing huge amounts of data that comes from AI. The picture I put here is a factory worker in a manufacturing plant wearing this robot skeleton. And that's the next big thing in manufacturing. Instead of what we did in the past 50 years, replacing humans with robots to assemble cars, now we're putting robots, skeletons on humans, to give them superhuman power so they can lift the parts, move it around, handle it. So now you're taking the incredible abilities of a human being at recognizing things, manipulating things, and giving them the power and the strength of the machine. So that's where I see the power of AI coming today and in the future, is taking all of our intuition, creativity, and augmenting it with the power of AI. Then there is, of course, the science fiction AI that a lot of people talk about, which is these autonomous thinking machines, a computer that thinks on its own. I don't think you want that. I mean, it's bad enough having humans that think on their own. Now you want a robot that you have to convince them to do a job, as opposed to having them work for you. And you have to hire a whole new HR department to deal with these types of robots. So it's cool, it's interesting, it belongs in the movies for now. So let me talk a little bit about trust in AI. One of the biggest problems that companies face in trusting an AI system is the black box issue. And what I mean by that is you have this powerful system that you paid a lot of money to acquire. You feed it a huge amount of data, and then it gives you a decision. But you don't know how it worked. One of the problems we had in many of my companies I worked at is we have AI systems that generate leads for the salespeople. And the salespeople, they look at the list and they ignore it because they don't understand how it was generated. And they say, forget it, I'm going to use my gut. I have been doing this for 30 years. That's what I'm going to do. Because they don't trust the system itself. It's a black box. You don't know what it is. Even experts in AI cannot tell you exactly what's happening inside the system because it discovers things on its own. That's what AI does. So it's really hard to describe what the system is. Imagine you're diffusing a bomb and you're using an AI system to tell you, cut the blue wire. How would you feel? The other problem is what's in the sausage. So when you have a large AI system, you feed it a huge amount of data, and then it gives you an outcome or a decision. And as you all know, if you are careful about picking what data you give people, you can make them come to any decision you want. So we all know that game, and it's incredibly dangerous. So there is a lot of suspicion about an AI system. What data you feed it tells you what it, or decides what the outcome will be. And many times the outcome could be completely wrong, completely opposite of what reality is. So it's really important to trust what you give your system, and it requires a lot of expertise, but most importantly, domain expertise. you need people who really know the business domain to know what data is relevant to feed the system. When you talk about your customer experience, do you feed it their actions when they when they interact with your product, or the color of their eyes? So those are the kinds of things that are important. The third element of trust, which is very present today. So I'm a client of your service. I surrender all of my data because you're giving me this awesome experience. But then, at some point, I'm a little kind of nervous. What are you doing to me? Because I know you're manipulating me. So should I trust you? How do I feel about interacting with you? And it is a real and present problem that many companies have to deal with. I think this is time for me to hand it off to Mike.
Thanks, Hamid. But not the last we will hear from you. We'll be bugging you some more throughout this thing. Thank you for that. I kind of want to take a step back a little bit too and talk about this idea, this definition of AI technology. And I want to start with Douglas Adams, who's an author. He is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, among other books. And he has a pretty genius thing that he came up with. And he said, I've come up with this set of rules that describe our reactions to technologies. And he's like, number one, anything in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary. So cool. AI right now, for like a 2-year-old, is just going to be the way it is, right? It's normal and ordinary, and that's the way it is. His second rule was anything that's invented between when you're 15 and 35 is kind of cool and exciting, right? And you can probably get a job in it. That was the second part. And then the third thing was, and I know we went down here, but the third thing was he talked about after 35, any technology after you're 35 is kind of like against the natural order of things, right? Like, oh my God, what is this thing? I don't understand it. It's gonna like freak everything out and break systems, right? And so if we think about how Douglas Adams kind of structured this, 0 to 15, 15 to 35, 35 plus, we're kind of in that space with AI right now. And if we look across the board and we look at how Generation Z, like kids today, are kind of talking about AI. Let me advance here that we're back up. On the left, starting on the left, there's this kid called Tanmay Bakshi, and he works for IBM. He's 14 years old, and he works with IBM on AI. And he talks about it in the sense of like, I'm really interested in sharing this knowledge with like the community and my people, right? Gen Z is an amazing generation, by the way. They have this great outlook on life in general. And so you have for him, AI is normal and ordinary, right? It's just a part of life. It's who I am. Then you have Mark Zuckerberg, God bless the Zuck, talking about AI, and they've gone through some struggles, but he talks about AI very optimistically, right? In fact, he says that. I'm very optimistic about AI. And then you have Elon Musk, right? And he falls to that 35 plus generation. He's definitely involved in AI a lot. And his quote here is, I've talked to Mark about this. His understanding of the subject is very limited, right? Which is pretty funny. But as you sweep through and look at generationally, it's really interesting to think about, right? Because part of the problem that we have with AI today is perception. What is it? Like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it a savior? Is it a destroyer, right? Is it Skynet? All of these things, and Hamid touched on that too. And we see this in stats, right? 59% of people say it's gonna help us live more fulfilling lives. Almost 50% of people say it's gonna take jobs away from us, right? Back and forth, good, bad, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be bad. There's this idea of what's really happening with this, right? From an AI perspective. And I wanna give a little example of this because there's a company called Microsoft, which you may know. They set up an AI kind of like learning system a couple years ago called Tay on Twitter. And I'm gonna bring it up right now and show you a couple tweets. What happened is Tay was supposed to learn from people, right? It was supposed to be like an AI system, learn from people, and kind of grow and learn and do all these things. What ended up happening was it started out great. It was like, hey, I'm Tay. It's my first tweet. Humans are really cool, and I'm really excited for this. And then what it degraded to was it just went down to like this kind of like neo-Nazi thing, right? And I'll let you read those tweets, but it went from the optimism and the coolness of something down into like, and this last tweet says it is, Tay went from humans are super cool to like a full-on fascist Nazi in 17 hours. And yeah, I'm not concerned about the future of AI at all, right? So when we talk about a perception problem, all companies are dealing with this, right? Microsoft is dealing with this. We're all kind of dealing with this. So where do we land on AI, right? What does that begin to look like? Where does that leave us? And I'm gonna just probably be the first person in AI presentation history to quote Drake in an AI presentation. So you're welcome for that, by the way. Drake was talking at his high school graduation. He went back and graduated from high school. It's a really great speech, actually. But the quote I want to pull out is he talked about sometimes it's the journey that teaches you a lot and not the destination. And that's what I want to focus on for a second, is this idea of the journey. Because I think, and Hamid, you touched on this for a second too. We're all focused on, it seems like we're focused a lot on what's AI going to do, right? What's the impact? How's it going to destroy jobs? Those are all fair questions to ask, but we actually need to take a step back. We need to look at the little incremental things along this journey path. So, journey tip, number one, data is innocent, right? We can talk about the good and the bad and that side of data, but it starts innocent, It's not a destroyer. Data is here to help us, and if we leverage it correctly, it can be incredibly useful. The other part of data being innocent that we have to keep in mind is it's growing, and it's growing a lot. This is a stat here that we see that there's connected devices per person. 2017 was 8. 2021 is projected to be 13. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you start to think about that kind of per person, right, that growth of personal data, it gets pretty overwhelming, right? And we see that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a picture that Heath, our chief creative officer, shared with me. This is his house, his systems connected in his house. And he told me this is just page 1 of 5, So it goes on and on and on. But you can see the entry point to data, and it points to a Sonos player, it points to a TV, it points to a printer, it points to on and on, thermostat, right? On and on and on. All those things, they're making up Heath's kind of personal ecosystem of data, right? And that's really important. There's the entry point here, right? It's not about the long-term game plan. It's understanding how Heath, in this case, works through this. The second point here is that there's a personalization renaissance happening here. I don't think any of us would understate that, but there's this idea of personalization and data fueling that. We see this every single day, and Hamid kind of touched on this too. We see it, and we don't see it. 60% of people over the past 2 years, they've done mobile searches for the qualifier "for me," right? They've grown, so that we're moving to this unconscious place of an example for this would be you would Google, for example, what's the best shampoo, right? What's the best shampoo? And now we're turning into what's the best shampoo for me? For me, for me, for me, for me, right? On and on, it's snowballs. We are moving to this place of personalization, right? And we are going to expect brands, we're gonna expect that data to meet us, right? In this very individual place. And all of us are gonna have different expectations when it comes to that. So that's the other journey tip right now, is how do you get ahead of that, right? At this moment in time. Netflix is a pretty interesting example of a brand that is doing this. They have something called, well, it's not called My Screen, but they customize artwork for this is an example here of Stranger Things, but they started to customize artwork based on things you've watched in the past. So your Stranger Things home landing page screen might be different than mine. If I watch more rom-coms, I'm going to get a Stranger Things kind of rom-com-y screen. I don't think they have one, but you know what I mean. If you've ever watched the show, there's not a lot of rom-com happening. But if I watch horror, right, or whatever it is, they're going to start to customize those home screens. That's all AI, right? That's machine learning doing that and spitting out something for me, right? Not for you, sorry, but it's for me. And that's what I care about with personalization, right? Is what is this brand doing for me? How's this data impacting me? The third tip is that, frankly, it's also the genie's out of the bottle when it comes to this. We know that consumers, they want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and in that kind of in that moment, right? In that spontaneous time and place, that's how they want their stuff today. Amazon is a good brand thinking about that, right? Looking at how they're getting stuff to people. And Joel's gonna touch on that a little bit too when we talk about the value. The other big part of this from a consumer side though is empowerment was a big buzzword, and it still is, and it's fair. But I feel like we've definitely moved from that empowerment to entitlement, right? And that's a behavior shift that people have, right? That is well, I'm just entitled to have this right now because every other brand does that for me. So where is it? Where is it, brand? That's my world today, right? And that entitlement is not selfish. right? It's just an expectation. And it's really fueled a lot in part by this data, right, that we're seeing and how machine learning and AI is kind of pushing this to people. Starbucks is a good example of this. They have something called the Digital Flywheel program. And Starbucks is a pretty aggressive brand with AI in general and kind of machine learning. But they're really starting to push this Digital Flywheel program in a way that, that it starts to take into account like your order history, the weather outside, right, the day of the week, and it bases orders around that. So it's like your Monday coffee eventually it could be different than your Friday coffee or your birthday coffee from your not, right? Those types of things. And it's just going to push that out to you. So when we talk about those expectations and entitlement, this is a good example of that, right? Of a brand kind of owning that. So we have data and expectations and personalization, right? And they're swirling. It's going around and around. And what we're starting to see is they're swirling around this idea of this trust ecosystem, right? And this is what I really want to kind of focus in on too. And I'm gonna get Hamid's take on a few things here in a second. But before we do, I also want to talk a little bit about trust, just in general, like remove AI from it. We're in a broken trust loop right now with consumers and brands. There's a lot of reasons for that. AI is part of it, frankly, like fake news and all that stuff. But in general, trust from a consumer perspective is just different than it was 10 or 15 years ago, right? People aren't as trustworthy, right? We've seen a lot of kind of like brands kind of violate that trust with people, right? Lie to them, data breaches, on and on and on. So people today with trust, it's really critical to think about that they are already at this place of being a little skeptical, right? Being a little cynical of when a brand talks about trust. So this is kind of like a sub point, but something to remember is when we talk about AI coming into this trust loop, you're already entering a broken trust loop. AI is not going to solve that, right? AI is not your savior for trust. You have to figure out your brand relationship and how AI helps with that, but it's not going to solve it, right? And consumers are already in this place of being a little like not trustworthy of brands, right? And what that looks like. All right, so the fun thing to remember as we kind of go through this idea of like how we kind of get this trust loop back in order in a way is for us in our industry, the first thing to remember is let's sweat the small stuff, you know? Let's look at the tiny kind of like problems that we want to solve with AI, not the big kind of like change the world problems. Those things will happen, but if we don't understand the little ones first, we're just going to completely miss the boat. And people are already, you know, Hamid touched on this, people are already using AI without even really knowing it. 60% of people are using machine learning and AI pretty much every single day on their smartphone, right? And they're not even really aware of it. And it's not like they really have to be aware of it, but it goes back to that like entitlement thing, right? An empowerment thing, and this is what I want Google Maps to do for me, or Spotify, right? Or whatever. It's already happening in people's lives. Like, go back to the genie's out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle, right? That bottle was like trashed and thrown away out into the universe. People are already there, right? They're using these things, and it really kind of fuels that idea of what we're talking a lot about. The other one is radical transparency, and this is where I want to like poke your brain a little bit, Hamid, is that your company, and you kind of touched on this, you know, you've been involved in the AI space for a while, and you're now moving into kind of like financial services with AI. Seems pretty touchy, money and AI and robots.
Understatement.
Yeah, understatement of the year probably. Can you just talk a little bit about how you guys approach transparency, or just your kind of thinking around that?
That's an excellent point in AI, and because AI is opaque in any way you think about it, as I was talking about the black box, but most importantly, AI is not 100% proof. An AI system makes mistakes all the time. It could be because it's poorly designed, but many times just because we live in an uncertain world, you don't have the right amount of data, and maybe the problem cannot be solved. So it's really important to be upfront with your clients to educate them on the failure of the system. When does the system fail to give you something right? And what are the reasons why it fails? So that when you give them something, they're already prepared to know that there could be a problem. So they will not come back to you and say, well, you told me that this client will do such and such, or this stock will go up, and how come it did not? Well, because that's the part of the reality of AI system. And the other element of the transparency is when you give them a result, it's really important to tell them how confident that the result is good. It's really important to tell them the AI system gave me this result, but this is garbage because it could be completely random.
Thank you for that. You're telling me AI doesn't solve everything?
Of course it does.
But really good points, right? That idea of like that transparency of like how it's leveraging that and being really transparent with people, absolutely critical for sure. A good way to think about this is Google has something called their AIY kits. DIY, AIY, get it? It's pretty cute actually. So a good way to think about this idea of transparency is get people involved. Like let people play with this stuff, right? The biggest fear is the unknown, right? So when people get in and they start to see it, there's this idea of like comfort and this idea of like knowing, right? And Google's doing a pretty good job at that. And their AIY kits are pretty fantastic. And I would suggest anybody, in this room or watching that I would like buy these and put them in your office and have people start playing with them. Just get your staff involved in this. How do these things work, right? How do we think about this? Because before you talk to brands about it, you have to understand it, right? Just have these around, like go out and do this stuff. Let's all kind of get to this idea of transparency. Another way to think about transparency is Apple, right? And there's a lot going on with privacy and data right now with the EU laws coming down, right? And everything happening around that. But Apple's done a pretty interesting thing where they talk about privacy as a human right. It's your human right. Privacy, like your data and your privacy is your human right. So every time a app or a service uses your data, they're going to show you this icon, right? Kind of like what they do with the triangle. If you have an iPhone, they show you like this place used your location, in the past, whatever. They're going to do this with data, right, and privacy. Really smart move to think about that idea of transparency and being good stewards, right? Of like who's using this and how are they using it? That's really that movement and progression that we're going towards.
Mike,
Yeah,
may I
please.
say
Yeah.
something? You mentioned that the idea of giving your employees the tools to play with AI. That's actually a really, really important point because in order to use AI, every person has to interact with this because AI lives and dies with domain expertise. So the experts are the ones who do that. The other thing is giving them the tools. Some people might freak out. They say, well, I'm not a data scientist. A lot of AI systems, if they're designed properly, interacting with them will be like swiping right and swiping left. So that's the kind of interaction that people can have with this. They're not going to be programming, writing algorithms or something like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Get them in there, right, in the
Absolutely.
trenches. Yeah, absolutely. And the third one is, or this last piece of this idea of thinking about trust is the humanization. We know just in general, people feel like they've lost control of their data, and it could be minor and it could be major, right? And Joel mentioned, or is going to mention kind of like Equifax and that idea of value, right, and what's happening. But that idea of like, where is my information? Who owns it? Who's buying it? Who's using it? How do I own it? Do I own it? Right? That idea is only going to kind of progress. And it could be minor, major, whatever it looks like, but it's happening. And so what we're starting to see is when it comes to AI, and especially kind of like technology in general, a move back to more humanization, right? Get people involved. Hamid, I'm going to put you on the spot again. It feels to me that like, you mentioned AI doesn't solve everything and you have to be transparent with it. Where do humans kind of fall out with that relationship as you think about like your company and your services?
Yeah, I think the common mistake in AI is when people use AI to replace the human. And AI systems, as intelligent as we portray them to be, they're actually really dumb. Dumb in the sense of understanding the domain expertise. So you really need a human to interact with the AI system to guide it. They're very good at computing numbers, but they're not good at knowing your business, knowing your clients.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that we're seeing is Google and Google / into YouTube and YouTube Kids. They've been having a problem with kind of like content coming through the chasm a little bit from the YouTube Kids side. And what they've done is they've actually went back and guess what they've done? They've hired people. They've hired people. up to 10,000 people, according to some reports, right? But that idea of like machine learning was supposed to be the solve all, and it's helpful, but they went back and they found that having people there is actually also supremely helpful, right? Because of context and emotional IQ, right? And just gut, you know, all the things that Hamid just kind of talked about too. So
Actually, may I
think
add
about-
one?
please, yeah.
This is actually a great point. Some people might think that, okay, AI was wrong, let's throw it out, let's use humans to go over these thousands of videos. Absolutely, humans will be much better at doing it. However, AI can aid them in their task. If you have a list of thousands of videos to watch, at least the AI system can sort it for you so that you start with the important ones that require your attention first. And then if you don't make it to the bottom of the list, at least you would have addressed the most important ones.
Absolutely right. And I think that goes back to the sweat the small stuff, right? Those
Yeah.
efficiencies that AI can help you
Absolutely.
out with and not the solve all.
And that's like a real bottom line issue. I mean, imagine the productivity you gain from having your employees focus on the important things first.
Absolutely right. So another way to think about this is Elon Musk owns Tesla, right? And Tesla's doing a lot of stuff. They're putting rockets, you know, in space. He shoots cars into space, right? They're digging under our cities, right? On and on and on. Elon Musk is doing a lot, and he's really
He's a robot.
He is a robot, and he's incorporating AI and machine learning in everything he's doing, and really a big fan of doing it as well. Obviously, as we talked about earlier, a little skeptical, but this was a tweet that went out that Elon Musk kind of said, you know, Tesla's relying on too many robots, right? Tesla's had a few incidents lately, some crashes, California, that kind of stuff, people putting autopilot on and taking a nap in the passenger seat, right? That kind of stuff. So they're definitely kind of going through this, like, what is automated driving and how does machine learning or AI help with that? That was a tweet, and Elon Musk in his retweet back or tweet back said, yeah, like excessive automation at Tesla was a mistake, right? Humans are underrated. And that's really what I want to focus on, right? That idea of this as a person building out, you know, pretty advanced technologies for our society, right? And for our world. And it's not a commentary if they're good or bad, it just is, right? He's rethinking transportation, and he's talking about how automation was overrated, right? And how humans have to come back into the fold. So when you think about that humanization side, that's also the really critical part as well. And it's changing, you know, Silicon Valley, it's changing big brands and their approach to consumers today. So John Culkin is a scholar, and this is a great quote. He borrowed it from Winston Churchill, kind of repurposed it. But I've always kind of loved this quote, especially as it relates to technology, because our history of technology, we've always had fear. Like I still think to this day there was somebody that was like, the square wheel is better, you know? I don't know about this round wheel. Like, what's going to do for us, right? Or we've seen it with the printing press and the telegraph, right? On and on and on. There's always this idea of technology. But this quote is great is because we shape our tools, right? We shape our technology and then they shape us. So the impact that AI is going to have on us, it's up to us to determine that, right? And it sounds a little hyperbolic or a little like Skittles and rainbows, and it kind of is, right? Because we're seeing this moment now where we can help shape this, right? And what it looks like. So when we think about trust and we think about AI, you know, this broken trust loop, like I said earlier, it's not going to fix it, right? It's going to have to build upon that value and what that value looks like. And I'm gonna throw it to Joel and to walk us through a little bit more about this idea of like trust and value and what that looks like.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Joel.
All right. So clearly, you know, AI has this power to help a brand build value, but also create this competitive advantage for them. But I want to take a step back and really look at the relationship between trust and value. So think about one of your favorite brands, and I'll use Volvo as an example. We have a lot of trust in Volvo that they will keep us safe. Their cars will keep us safe. And because of that trust, the value in that brand is increased. But let's think about Facebook or Equifax. When that trust is lost, the value that we see, the brand value, decreases as well. And in some instances, even the stock value decreases. So really ensuring that this equilibrium between trust and value stays the same is really, really critical. And some of the most innovative brands ensure that trust and value are kept in equilibrium. And what we're kind of seeing today is those innovative companies are leveraging AI to ensure that experience continues to grow and to build more value with their customers. And again, trust answers this question: how confident am I that the brand will deliver the promised experience for the cost? And we think about cost. Cost isn't just financial. It's not just what we pay. It could be our time, right? It could be the data that we're giving to that brand or that company. Now, what happens when a brand that we trust begins to diminish in value? So let's look at a couple examples. Kodak. So Kodak was founded in 1888, right? They've been around forever. And they were really known for film, right? And the problem there is that Kodak saw themselves as a film company. They didn't see themselves as a brand that really captured memories, because that's what they did. They didn't develop a product. In the consumer's mind, what the consumer valued was that you're giving me a physical manifestation of this memory, and that's why I'm buying your product. They lost that connection with what the consumer's value really was. And over time, enter 2010 Instagram. Instagram comes into the picture in 2010, right? Digital cameras are coming into the marketplace. Smartphones are starting to enter into the marketplace. Kodak lost the boat. They disconnected and really lost the sense of disruption that was really happening in the marketplace. And Instagram, what they did was they saw these consumer trends. They understood the problems that their customers were needing solved, and they solved them, right? So I can take a picture on my smartphone, I can edit that photo, throw a filter on it, and share it in just a couple of swipes. Whereas Kodak developed a product that I would have to take a photo, get it developed, scan it, open it in Photoshop. You know, the process of really trying to get a photo from a physical film into the web was really a laborious process. There was too much friction. And Instagram capitalized on that. As you can see here, 2012, Kodak went bankrupt. And in that same year, Instagram had a market cap of $1 billion and only had 13 employees. It's incredible. Another example, right? So what happens when a company decides not to really innovate? So Dollar Shave Club and Gillette. So Gillette's been around for over 100 years. Their main business model is to keep the hairs off of our body, right? And they've done it really well. But Dollar Shave Club came into the marketplace, and so did Harry's. There's a number of companies that have really tried to disrupt the razor market. But Gillette really didn't innovate, right? And what Dollar Shave Club realized is they understood what the customer wanted. They didn't want to go to CVS or Walmart and look at the wall of razors that are under lock and key and figure out, is that ninth blade really going to give me a better shave for the price, right? It was just the friction of really trying to make that decision was really painful for a consumer. And you had to go back often, right? And Dollar Shave Club realized, you know what, I'm going to take the choice out of it. I'm going to deliver one blade that is a really high quality, and I'm going to deliver it to the customer so they don't have to go and purchase it. It's going to come right to their door when they want it and need it. So Gillette had a couple of options. You know, did they innovate? How do they really respond to this disruption? This is what they did. They said, we heard you wanted the best shave at a lower price, right? We heard you. Is really dropping price a way to innovate? You know? What they did was they were trying to compete on price alone. And in business school, this was one of the things I keep hearing my professor telling me, you know, price competition is not competition at all. Anyone can really cut you from a price perspective. That's not going to build a competitive advantage and really barriers to entry in a marketplace. And for a brand, this is self-administered suicide, right? It's really hard to back out of that situation once you start competing on price and not really thinking about the experience that your customers really want. Now, deviated a little bit from AI, so we'll bring AI back into the picture a little bit. And I want to keep this context of the consumer at front and center. We really want to ensure that all of the companies that we work with and brands, you want to ensure you keep that strong, loyal relationship with your customer. And there's a couple important points about this. You want to ensure that you're delivering something that is relevant to your consumer. What do they want today? Not what did they want 20 years ago, and you're thinking that they still want the same thing. Always understanding, what do they need today? What problems can you solve for them? Are you offering a differentiated product that really helps you compete within the marketplace? Are you doing something different from someone else, right? And the last part is, are you delivering a relevant experience, this kind of brand experience that really is delightful and heightened? These three components are really important in ensuring you maintain this loyal relationship with your customer. And these 3 points mirrored again, right? Experience. What do my customers want today? What's the value that they're getting for the cost? And how easy are we making this experience for them? You know, don't make me think is an adage we use in digital all the time, right? And if you bring these 3 pieces together, it really builds a competitive advantage. And this is where AI really can fit in. We've talked about personalization. We've talked about AI being able to make things more efficient and really understanding what the consumer wants based on data. This is the way we compete in the future. Now, we've talked about jobs. There is a lot of concern about jobs, being replaced by AI and robots. And part of it is true. You know, any task that is repetitive can be and will be performed by a robot or artificial intelligence. Not all jobs, but some of them will, and we're seeing it today. But there are others that are being augmented, and some fully replaced. So Tesla, as you've heard, has entered into the trucking business with the self-driving truck that ultimately is augmented by human. We've got fast food restaurants that are able to make the perfect burger based on exactly what the customer wants, medium rare, rare, well done, and do it 5 times faster than a human. But there are areas, again, where disruption isn't fully going to replace jobs. So, Hamid, I know you're in this space, and fintech is an area that is really seeing a lot of innovation with AI. So what is your perspective? Do you feel like, the work you're doing is going to replace jobs or augment jobs?
Well, obviously, it is going to replace a lot of jobs. In finance, for instance, there are armies of analysts who spend all their day analyzing the data. And that aspect of the work obviously can be best done by a machine. The part of the work in finance that cannot be replaced is the fundamental analysis. Example, Peter Lynch, one of the legends in stock investing, used to walk down the streets and just see which stores are doing well, where are people walking, what are they doing, and then he would go and call his stockbroker. He would say, I think you should buy Taco Bell or something like that. And he made a fortune from that. So instead, if the financial industry leverages AI properly, yes, they will get rid of all of that manual analytical work. However, these analysts can spend their time walking the streets and understanding humans and make sense of the data instead of just crunching numbers day in and day out.
Very interesting. So let's look back at some consumer behavior, because whenever we make decisions, particularly in the digital space, we always start by looking at insights and behaviors. So 88% of consumers care about delivery and convenience more than the brand, which is kind of a scary thing to think about. But the reality is true. We buy on Amazon, and we make decisions based on consumer reviews, right? More so than the brand itself. And the value there is we get it in 2 days, right? That Amazon Prime delivery, it's huge. And on that note of purchasing, 6 in 10 consumers are really comfortable with technology purchasing the products for them. It's really fascinating to think about, and AI is going to make that even more possible, because it's going to know what we want. It's going to know what we need based on the interactions we spend online. And Amazon is making a fortune out of this. We're seeing not only do they sell products, they're entering potentially into healthcare, they're moving into so many different verticals, groceries, that they're really understanding the unique components in our habits across some of the core areas of our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're addressing so many of them and capturing that data points about what we want, when we want, how we want it. Now, to bring this back to AI and again, this disruption that I see happening, there is true disruption. This is another change that's happening just as when the iPhone came into the marketplace, or even when the internet came on, right? This technological disruption that's happening. And brands, more than ever today, need to think about, what is the world going to look like 5 to 10 years from now? How is the value I think I'm delivering to my customer going to change? what do they really want and need, right? And interesting thought here, I was thinking about attorneys as an example. There's a significant amount of attorneys that deal in traffic violations. When we have self-driving cars to the point where they actually work and they don't hit people, right? And traffic accidents go down, DUI accidents go down. What's the market for attorneys, traffic attorneys in some instances, right? How is that kind of flow going to really diminish? And what happens when two self-driving cars get in an accident, right? It's not driven by a human. Does Tesla then go to court? Right? And if you start extrapolating what the world may look like, it will really help you figure out how you need to position your value in this new world. Because it's not going to happen, it already is happening. Now, I want to bring in the example of Blockbuster and Netflix. So we talked about Netflix earlier and how they're leveraging AI. Netflix has been around for a long time. They came into the marketplace in the late 90s. I could go online, order a movie, it would be delivered in 2 to 3 days, right? But I could keep that movie for as long as I wanted. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I didn't have to pay these horrible late fees. And I paid enough late fees to Blockbuster, I could have funded a month's rent for one of those stores. But Blockbuster missed the boat, They didn't realize that technology was really helping to improve that experience, right? If I go into a Blockbuster, when I did, because they don't exist anymore, obviously, my choices were either I had to know what movie I wanted to rent, or I would go to the aisle that would say new releases, of which, if you didn't get there right after work, most of them were gone, or go to the ones that were most popular, right? And those were often gone as well. So it was a painful experience, right? And Netflix really came into the marketplace and figured out, here are the pain points with the movie rental experience. And they eliminated those pain points. They eliminated the friction. And today, they've really leveraged personalization and AI, as Mike had mentioned, to build this competitive advantage, right? They saw the consumer trends that were shifting. They understood how technology could play a role. And now they're continuing to innovate. And that's the part that I think is really important for us to wrap our heads around, is that we must continue to innovate now, right? And AI is a huge part of it. So again, why did Netflix usurp Blockbuster? Well, experience, right? It was convenient. Netflix was way more personalized. There was a huge amount of value, right, for the price. And I trust Netflix now to be able to make a recommendation for me. If it says there's a 93% chance you're going to like this movie, most of the time they're right. And there's trust that I see in that experience. And then ease. At the end of the day, they eliminated the friction. It was convenient, it's integrated, I can watch it on my TV, I can then get on a plane and pick up the movie where it left off on my iPad, and then if I'm walking down the street or in the subway, I can watch a show on my phone, right? It's everywhere.
May I just make small points? You talk a lot about trust, and actually this is an excellent example because we trust Netflix to give you recommendations, and you said they're 93% right, which means they're 7% of the time wrong, but you don't look at them and say, you guys screwed up, and then you cancel your subscription. You just trust them that they're trying to give you good value, and that forgives that kind of failure.
Exactly.
That's really important.
Yeah.
And I know, Mike, we had a conversation yesterday around this, and I thought you had a really interesting perspective on one of the values that Netflix brings.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it at a previous employer, right around the what you were talking about, the 2010-ish area. We were doing some research on families and technology, and they said the number one thing they loved about Netflix, like the number one thing, was you could watch something, pause it, pick it up on another device, like. Sweat the small stuff, right? Yeah. These are little tiny incremental edits that dramatically change people's lives and the value by which they see the brand, So,
and that's science fiction in the TV world.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, it was that stat always sticks with me. Fascinating because it was the smallest thing that made such a huge difference for people,
Very true.
Yeah.
Interesting. And from my perspective, I'm a digital guy. I truly believe that AI is going to be this linchpin between future value and trust, particularly in a digital world. Because as we've talked about today, it is about personalization, it is about me. What do I want? And AI allows that personalization at scale without, in some instances, it can be augmented by humans. But when it comes to some of these digital experiences that we have, AI is really that power behind that knows what I want and delivers that experience for me. And I love this question. We should ask ourselves, how will we compete in a world where technology might be one of our competitors? And when you think about that thought, it really, it can almost tear your brain apart to a certain extent. Who are we really marketing to?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just I was going to
Please.
say, this is very interesting too, because I tend to think like down the road, especially in our industry, well, in a lot of industries, but let's stick with ours, we're going to have to think about like how we market to machines, how we market to robots, right? It's like, talk about a mind meld, right? Like that's weird to think about, but it's really important because what we've been talking a lot about is, consumer and brand, okay? And our world is, how do we help brands reach consumers, right? Experiences, social media, on and on and on. Okay, that's great. AI is gonna like come right in the middle of that, right? So our relationship to consumers is just gonna inherently be different. It's gonna have to be. So we're gonna have to think about like, how do we begin to market to that AI? Because that AI is gonna be looking out for the consumer, right? So a little bit future forward, but it's a very important question we need to start to ask ourselves in this industry, in all industries, frankly, is how do we market to machines, right? How do we market to robots?
Actually, it's an intriguing point.
Thank you.
I never thought I never thought of it that way. But when you think about it today, when you post a YouTube video or you publish a website, you put all kinds of keywords because you're marketing to search engines.
Right.
So that's actually cool.
Yeah, it's a whole other level of
Yeah.
SEO.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Just blows it out of the water, yeah, in a very interesting way. But yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, as a brand, what do you need to do? As I've said before, it's important to begin innovating now. And a lot of companies have different ideas of what innovation truly means. My sense is that a lot of companies feel like innovation means, how can I build this product or service more efficiently? But they're not really thinking about, how do I completely shift and augment that experience using technology? Because there's a huge swath of innovation opportunities for every business. So think of Campbell's soup. We think of them as the soup brand, right? Or maybe the dried powder soup that you use, to make chicken noodles. But
You're making me hungry.
yeah, it's almost lunchtime in a while. But what they've started to do is they've gotten into the personalized nutrition business. They're now leveraging DNA data to deliver meal kits that are personalized to you. Who would have ever thought Campbell's would have gotten into that business? But they have seen this trend and the shifts that are happening in consumer behaviors. And it's about personalization, it's about me, and really this kind of desire for more health-conscious products. So instead of them completely getting rid of their brand itself as Campbell's, they've found a new opportunity and they are now developing new business units that are leveraging AI to increase their brand value. And that's what true innovation really means. And if we don't begin innovating, brands will die. They will die. And it's scary. And according to Gartner, 10% of total marketing dollars are allocated to innovation. And only 23% of CMOs have a dedicated innovation budget this year. And this is within Fortune 1000s, right? These numbers are really low. Because again, the next 2 to 3 years are going to be dramatic. They will be dramatic. Consumers are starting to see AI play a role in our devices. Again, it's very invisible. Some of the best AI is invisible. But the monsters of Apple, Google, Facebook, they are really building AI and they're innovating dramatically. If you saw the Google news yesterday, they now have a voice service that sounds so much like a human, it's creepy. It is really, really creepy, and they are putting Apple Siri, to the test with this. But they're innovating. So I ask, companies that are in this room and online, how are you innovating? And are you really looking at technology as part of your innovation strategy? So from, again, my perspective, AI, it's not about what AI should I put to this problem, or find a problem for. It's really starting with the problem, understanding what opportunities really exist within my company, what do my consumers want and need, and then finding a digital strategy that is paired with AI that aligns with your business strategy. And in order for this the success of this to take place within an organization, you really need that senior level support. The leadership within an organization needs to buy into the fact that this is a learning time for us now, right? If we're not really experimenting right now, we're falling behind the boat. And it's not about finding an AI that we can instantly bring to market and generate revenue from, right? That's going to come. We have to experiment with it now and find out what does it actually mean for my company and for my brand. So with that said, we're going to move into some takeaways from today's discussion. So the first one is, forecast your value. And this is, again, what I've been talking about. What does the world look like 5 or so years from now where AI and digital innovation is really present? How does that shift what my customers want and need? And maybe are there new opportunities to capture new customers with new products and services? AI is really the linchpin of this, and it's about building this really sound business and digital strategy that underpins it.
My takeaway is augment, don't replace. The least skilled human being you have in your company could become Superman with AI. They have eyes, they have hands, they have a brain that AI will never be able to replace in our future, in the foreseeable future. So instead of thinking of AI as a replacement for these people, think of it as a way of augmenting their abilities. Let AI do the things that they can't do, but let them use their human intuition, dexterity, intelligence to guide the system to solve the problems that you really care about.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good lead in into solving the problems you care about. Is, I think it's important to remember that AI is not a panacea, right? This isn't like a magic pill that's going to solve everything. I feel like in today's day and age, at least I don't know about you, but every newsletter I read is like AI, how to solve your marketing problems. AI, how to change the world, right? Fair points, but we have to remember, to your point about augmentation,
yeah.
Hamid, is we have to, going back to the humanization side, right? The personalization side, all this kind of stuff works together. And AI is not going to be the cure-all Band-Aid that you put on something and everything's fine, right? And so that's why starting small, looking at your employee set, like you mentioned, right? Bringing tools into your company, into your business, right? Start with those things. That's how we're going to kind of get to how AI really helps you, right? It's not going to be roll out of bed and, yay, AI saved all my problems. It's just not going to happen, right? So we have to start small and remember that it's not a cure-all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, it's a really interesting discussion there. I think we've got some questions, from the audience.
From online.
And
Great.
great.
I have a mic here. Anyone who has questions here, let me know. Raise your hand.
Great, and I'm going to actually ask a first question because as you were talking about the future being that we're going to have to market to machines,
Yeah.
are we already there? Because, you look at Alexa and you look at Siri and, how is that part of the journey of shaping this marketing in the age of AI?
Yeah. So it's a good question. There's probably two ways to look at this. The first one is what you're talking about is these kind of small tool sets. You mentioned the Google I/O the other day, and they have this human assistant, right? There's all these little things that are coming up and evolving. We need to look at those as part of just basically a marketing plan, right? How do those things help us as much as a TV ad or a radio spot or a social media buy, whatever it is, they become a tool, right? So that's how it helps there. I think the larger discussion too is, and I'm not going to get too futuristic here, but Joel and I the other day were talking about, you have a Brita filter, and it's on the Amazon Web Service. So basically what it does is it knows when Joel needs a new filter, the filter knows, and it orders a new filter, and it comes to your door. You don't really have to go buy it. You don't really have to pay attention to it, right? It just knows it. So in the future, let's say we are representing a filter company that is a competitor. we would want to look at Amazon's AI, and that's who we're going to market to. We're not going to market to Joel. Joel doesn't care about the water filter, right? Amazon does. So if we can show Amazon's AI that it's cheaper, we have it in storage quicker, it's better in urban environments, whatever it is, right? Whatever that thing is, that's what Amazon's going to care about, and that's what's going to show up to Joel. Right? So that's kind of what I mean too, is when we think about how we market to robots, we have to start to think about how brands and products and services find their way to consumers, because that's about to radically edit too and change as well. So kind of two ways to look at it: more immediate, just get in there and just go build a skill in Amazon, frankly. Like, just go do it, please. Yeah. And then the second one is the much larger discussion about how we navigate a relationship between consumer and brands, and it goes back to your value point as well. So
Very interesting. Questions from the audience? We've got
here.
one right here.
Hi.
Hi.
Great presentation. I wanted to know, in terms of some of the regulation that's coming out of the EU, how will this affect AI, and do you think it'll be a good first step to rebuilding some of the consumer trust, just with data in general?
So I'll start. I'll take this one. I'm a pretty optimistic guy about data and AI and technology in general. I think the stuff coming out of the EU is great, because I feel like people didn't really know what we kind of talked about. There's a loss of control of data and where it's at and where it's housed and all this stuff. And I think all the Facebook stuff proved it, right? People were like, oh my gosh, I downloaded all my data and it's like pages and pages and pages. And I didn't know they had all this stuff on me, right? Or my friends or my family. So we're kind of coming to a place of awareness. And so I think all this stuff of EU is good, because it feels like a consumer advantage, right? And I'm doing a broad sweep on it, but I think that overall it needs to happen. And if it comes from the what's happening with the EU is great, because if anything, it's going to help us feel more like in control or empowered of our data, and give us the right tools to like push back when a brand is maybe being aggressive with it, right? Or not using it correctly, and feel like we have support from it as well, from a governmental side. So I'm a fan of it, and I think it's actually probably a good thing to have in place, because there really isn't any regulation around AI, and so that's why it feels a little Wild West. So I think any step in that direction, especially from a consumer perspective, is a good one.
And, go ahead.
If I add one point, regulation, I mean, as painful as it is, sometimes it is the engine that makes a product succeed. Take the example of the railway industry. When it first started in the US, every state, every area had their own, the width of the rails was different. So once the regulation came out that everybody should follow a certain standard, that's how it took off.
Yep. And from a development perspective, what's happening in the EU is actually making our job much more challenging, because if you're a global brand or you put something on the web that anyone can really access, the standards of how US handles privacy and data, and now the EU makes it much more expensive and complicated for us to ensure that we are following those regulations. To your point around rail, there needs to be a global standard.
Yeah.
Like that has to happen. Yeah. And I think what the EU is doing is really starting to bring to light the fact that we are behind in the United States, and that there needs to be an international standard around privacy.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure. So it was hello. Okay. So it was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it very much. Like you were saying, Mike, AI is all over the place. I mean, you read so many articles and news about it. The one question that I have is, guys like Elon Musk from Tesla, who they're at the front of AI and everything else. Bill Gates, who he's still pretty involved with Microsoft and everything. Mm-hmm. All those guys are raising concerns about AI in general. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with that from a society? I mean, people listen to those people, mm-hmm. and people, I think, in general, they're afraid of artificial intelligence. What can be done when you have the fathers of AI, questioning?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's some context with Elon Musk too, because he wants to start putting wires into your brain. So there's some important context to be had around like technology and biology kind of coming together. But I do think it's a good point to raise. And I guess my take on this is usually looking from a consumer perspective is there's no doubt there's fears, but that's why we really wanted to point out this idea of trust when it came to humanization. the AI is only going to be as good as we build it right now. And data is not biased, but humans are. So we have to start to become much more conscious, much more mindful of how we use that data, because we just have inherent biases, right? So part of our behavior as we build AI is going to have to change, frankly. So like I said earlier, I tend to lean more on a more optimistic side of this stuff. I'm not a Skynet kind of guy, but I do think that there are dangers for sure, and I am certainly worried about jobs. But I also see the other side of this, which is if we have more time as humans, what are we going to do with it? Right? Like, are we gonna help humanity? Are we gonna spend more time with our families? I'll probably just watch more Netflix. But whatever that looks like too. So we're in this like rudderless place right now, and I think the way to ground us or anchor us is like just being responsible and being good stewards of data right now is gonna help us kind of like think about those consequences down the road. Because if we get caught up in that too much, we're actually gonna miss the boat of how we're building it today. And that's why we wanted to talk about that humanization side. So I don't have a 1+1 answer, but I do think right now it's just like really looking closely, smallly, incrementally, and really consciously and mindfully about how we're leveraging that data.
Actually, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, had a great quote. He said, "We should not fear machines that think like humans. We should fear humans and think like machines."
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
All right, we have a couple online questions. This one's for Hamid. AI still seems like hype to my organization. How do I make the case to my organization that it's not hype?
That's an excellent question. And the answer is, look at the problems that your organization is saving today with computers. A lot of them are AI problems, are being solved by AI, even though it's small. Sometimes people think of AI as this huge system that you have to buy from Google or whoever. AI could be really, really small, so it doesn't have to be big. And making a case to spend millions of dollars bringing an AI system in your enterprise, if you don't already have an infrastructure, if you don't have the culture of AI, is probably a mistake, because it's a journey, like you said. You have to grow with it to be able to use it. The firm has to evolve with it. So the advice is start small. Start with very tangible problems that affect your customers immediately, and think about what is the equivalent of a thermostat that I can give them. The example you brought up of Netflix, remembering where did I stop watching the movie when I was on my phone, now I'm in front of my TV. From a technology point of view, that's really simple. You just like put some information in a database, put a timestamp in a database, and then get it back. We do that all the time. So my advice is look for problems like that and start there.
Do you mind if I just say something real quick?
Of
And I'm going to
course.
kind of reiterate something I've already said, but I plead to everybody in the audience and watching, just go buy an Alexa and have people build a skill in your company.
Yeah.
Just like, has anybody built a skill in Alexa? Yeah, there's like
Of
one
course.
person,
Heath.
right? Go do it. It's actually super easy,
You don't have to be a developer.
You do not. And I think that's part of this too, is like there's this like, I don't know what AI is because it's a coding thing, right? Or it's whatever, but it's getting much easier from a consumer perspective. So we brought up the AIY from Google. I would actually implore, just go buy an Alexa, put it in a conference room in your office, and tell people to go build a skill, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would do as well, is just like get people comfortable with it.
All right. One more question from online that builds on an earlier comment. So how will marketing to AI balance the competing needs of Amazon versus the consumer? Amazon will want better margins and be less concerned with product performance.
Do you want me to jump in?
Jump in, we'll all contribute to that one.
It's a great question, first of all. Joel brought up a good stat where it's like people just care about behavioral stuff, time, convenience, right? And it's kind of brand agnostic. So Amazon as a service is providing a behavioral they're providing a behavioral solution, and so that brand is less important about how it gets to you, right? In that way, same day, 2 day, whatever. So I tend to think that the Amazon to consumer relationship is being built right now based on a lot of what you talked about, and so I'm hard pressed to think that Amazon just won't become an AI at some point, and and it's probably going to be all our AIs in some degree, and we are just going to purchase stuff through that because they're building it on these behaviors and not necessarily products, right? Does that make sense? I mean, products are important and brands are important, but it's also about like how that stuff gets to me. How do I find it? What are reviews, right? On and on and on. And those really sway perceptions of how people purchase products. So Amazon has a big stranglehold over that.
They do. I mean, the amount of data they have on products that have been purchased and how consumers feel about them, it's a huge competitive advantage and barrier to entry for anyone else to be able to bring that to market. And when you see the disruption that's happening, grocery stores are under threat, right, by online channels. We see shopping malls closing. Like the places we used to go to buy products, we're shifting those dollars to Amazon in so many ways, which is very scary. It's very scary.
All right. We have a question here in the back.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a quick question. Many of the jobs that existed in the past, they no longer exist. And what I see that is going to be happening with big data, AI, innovation, technology, jobs like doctors, I mean, in the future, like with Watson, you enter what you see in the patient and it's going to tell you exactly what it is. So what do you think will be the professions of the future? What are the jobs of the future, taking into consideration what we have now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll jump in real quick, and I just have one word answer for this, empathy. I think you're gonna see that's that human side. I think you're gonna see doctors leverage AI in a way to find those things, but that relationship is still gonna be there, right? And I'm sure in fintech, right, you were talking about too, that relationship, that's something AI can't replace, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a very personal thing. So I would say empathy. I would say how doctors begin to remove themselves from behind the desk into the front of the desk. How they sit down with people, how they talk to people. So I would be surprised. I mean, I would be surprised if we didn't see changes in how doctors are being educated that way over the next 20 or 30 years. So I think you're just going to see more empathy, frankly, because of that humanization side coming in.
Actually, I read this great article saying that the jobs of the future will basically rely on the human factors, creativity, intuition, things like that. In the financial area, the example, I don't know how many of you have dealt with a financial advisor. You sit down with them and they ask you a bunch of questions. How old are you? How much money do you make? When do you plan to die? What's your risk tolerance? All kinds of crazy questions that only induce stress when you talk to them. So with a good AI system, lots of them are happening today, is all of those things will be taken care of by the AI system. The AI system knows your spending habits, knows how much money you make. So there's no point in asking those questions. Know what is your life expectancy based on your lifestyle, because it knows what food you're ordering from Amazon. So all of those things. Now instead, the advisor can just look you in the eye and say, how are you feeling today? Or what kind of places you enjoy. So all kinds of human things that they lower the stress level, but they also sometimes generate data that cannot be seen in your financial statements. And that's how they can be a better guide. The same thing as a doctor. I mean, the doctor can do all the analysis in the world. It does not replace the doctor looking at you and having a chat, talking about random things, and then suddenly picking up on some subtlety that you never voiced. And they say, okay, now I see what's going on here.
And while a lot of jobs are going to be replaced, just as they were 100 years ago that don't exist today, there's interesting statistics and research that shows in the next 10 years, over half of the jobs that will exist don't even exist today yet. So there will be a new churn of new opportunities for humans to bring value and be productive members of society, but we just don't know what they all are yet.
Very interesting. Another question here.
Sure, and I was thinking about I guess the other side of what you're seeing with the EU, where they're putting in more privacy protections and looking at more of maybe advancement, research development, and kind of the value of more data and the competitive edge, say, someplace like maybe China would have, where there's less value on privacy, they might have access to a lot more intrusive data collection. How much should be, and I think maybe start with you, but how much of that do you think is a competitive advantage? How important is that? And then future in the US, do you see it being more of a direct relationship with some of these larger players? Say, I decide I'm an Amazon guy, I'm doing a lot with them, I'm going to give them access to more of my data, but I'm not going to give it as much to Google, Facebook, or someone else because I'm just going to do it with them. And then, how much of it, you were talking about barriers to entry for other people because of the competitive advantage of data these companies have already. Maybe look at the competitive advantage of that and how far ahead they are. But first, maybe with the value of it.
That's an excellent question. And when you think about the data that's being collected from us in the US or China, I don't think there is any difference there. Because in the US, they collect everything about us. So, so from that point of view, I don't know what China has. I know that there is the controversial thing, the biggest controversial thing China is doing is they're computing this social score on people. So based on your social media and everything. So when you want to marry someone, you have to look up their social score, or when you apply for a job and things like that. So that's one thing that's where China is going overboard. But in terms of collecting data, unless there's the criminal stuff where they can go and get your data, like your phone records and so forth, which in the US you have to go through a lot of hoops to do that. Yeah, it is an advantage, but I think it's dwarfed by the other amounts of data. The real competitive advantage is China. They are spending huge amounts of money on AI. Baidu, Alibaba, they're just like at the cutting edge of AI. I went there for a conference and I was shocked by the number of AI activities they have there. They had thousands of PhDs in machine learning. They have the means to do that. They have the population to do that. Their computing power is incredible. They have the most powerful computers in the world, and they are laser focused on building competitive advantage capability in that space. So we're losing to China. No way. No question, no question, because they believe in the power of AI, and they're going full speed ahead towards that.
All right, we've got a question there.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be here this morning. I just wanted to say, we have institutions like the Library of Congress. In Britain, we have the Bowdoin Library, and their main purpose is to capture culture and human history as it's happening. At what point, and what would be the catalyst when everything online begins to be captured and recorded for the same reasons?
That's a tough question.
It's an excellent question. I don't know how many of you read science fiction books, but Isaac Asimov is one of my favorite authors, and he wrote about Encyclopedia Galactica, basically building this library that captures everything we know. And now lately I've been reading a great book called Sapiens, talking about the evolution of humans. And then I'm drawing the parallel between the two in the sense that when you talk about culture history, is basically all of the things we create, like the stone tools that the prehistoric societies built, capture the knowledge that we know about them. So their actions, their inventions, basically tell the story of what they were and what they are. So I can imagine, like, if somebody were to analyze our systems, let's say they get an Alexa box, let's say 15,000 years from now, and they start asking it questions, the answers they will get from Alexa are informed by our lifestyles, about our information, all of those things. So the products that we create, the digital breadcrumbs we leave, are a capture of that. It doesn't have to be explicit in terms of here is the message that Sally sent Joe or whatever, but there is this product called the iPhone that was created because people need to communicate, need to gossip, need to brag about their cat and all of those things.
It always comes back to a cat meme.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
And I would say, it's a great question. I would say in some ways it's already starting.
Yeah.
I mean, do you use Spotify? Do you use Netflix? Do you use Google? Do you use Amazon? It's already kind of there. I get your point about like more of a centralized thing, but let's say your AI, you're going to have an AI, that's going to be a representation of what what you're talking about, right? Like your kind of lifestyle across those services. So in some ways, those breadcrumbs are already being scattered, you know, based on the services we're using, and they are all based on data, and they're all based on personalization to some degree, you know. So it's already being built in a way right now.
It's just that
Great.
there is no single owner
There's no single owner.
of all of our data.
Right, right. But it's,
Or repository of it.
yeah, exactly.
Should there be?
I don't think so. I think I should be the sole owner of my data.
Yeah.
And not have it be spread across 8 different companies. And that's ultimately what scares me a lot about AI, is that there is jobs that will be replaced, right, and augmented, but the jobs that are displaced, let's say 100,000 jobs get lost in manufacturing. There may be 1 or 2 companies that own the AI that replaced those or took those jobs. So there's an unequal power distribution or redistribution of power in 1 person, you know, or 2 people. And it's already happened before AI. You know, we're seeing it with Amazon to a certain extent, how it's really disrupting every industry known to man. And it is taking jobs, but there's 1 man that owns it. And it's very, the implications on society, I think we're just starting to see what they could be. And that is a frightening prospect.
Interesting. Great. One final question here.
Well, just a comment that I'd like to get your reaction to, which is you mentioned about machines marketing to machines. And I'm not even sure that marketing needs to exist in that case. We have a software platform that has a link called an API to IBM Watson. And then we have a set of pre-programmed if-then decisions that basically decide what components of IBM Watson to use. And if it uses, their cash register rings. If it makes a decision to turn it in our direction, our cash register rings with a client. There's no marketing there. That's just a machine decision.
That's a process, right? Yeah. Yeah. So comment being, is marketing even going to be important? I mean, I think what you're going to see is, and again, this is assumption, right? But I think what you're going to see is more processes are going to happen like that. So if we think about what I talked about earlier with like consumer and brand and AI coming in the middle, you'll probably see brands leapfrog over that and do more experiential things, right? More pop-up stuff, more this, more that. So marketing is just going to take on a different form. It's not going to go away. It's just going to have to navigate a big brick wall of AI, right? Of ones and zeros, and how to reach the consumer in a new kind of world order. And then when it goes through that AI, that's just going to be more process oriented. You're right. It's like that's like the water filter example, right? Like the marketing to Amazon from that water filter is just price or research and development, right? Or whatever it is, has to sell that Amazon AI, but that's not marketing. That's just that's 2 AIs talking together, right? For a process. But there will, I'm hard pressed to think marketing will like go away or advertising will go away. I think it's just going to look different because it's going to have to navigate around all the stuff we've been talking about. I don't know, is that a fair point?
No, it is. I think there should be an AI override for consumers to a certain extent.
Well,
Or if
and
there is
brands
a brand
can
that
be
we
that.
want,
Yeah.
right? That I can say, all right, this is a product I actually want. Don't make this decision for me, right?
Yeah.
Just one quick thing. From an AI point of view, I'm not sure the marketing aspect will go away. So if I were to define marketing as a way of presenting information in a certain context, then we have to do that for AI, because just flooding the AI system with all the information you've got you will get garbage. So it's really important to present the information in the right context. So that from that point of view, I think there will always be room for what's marketing or whatever we call it for machines.
And that's a great note to end on. Thanks. That gives us a lot to chew on. Again, thank you all for joining us today. And we want to let you know that this presentation will be available on the Padilla POV YouTube channel at padillapov.com. And we're going to be doing another POV on other topics, so please be on the lookout. And in closing, make today a great day. And remember that everyone has a point of view, and make yours known. Thank you.
Thank you.